you will hear, or you just heard maybe that the recording has actually begun, and a YouTube of this evening's meeting will be available on the diocesan website. So I'm going to now open us in prayer. The Lord be with you. Gracious Lord, we thank you for this day that is drawing to a close. We thank you for the beauty of your nature, for the opportunities of this day. We leave behind the failures of this day and give you thanks for your grace and mercy. We thank you for the people of downtown Jacksonville. We pray for their comfort and strength and security and dignity. We remember all in any harm or troubles way. We pray for those who today have passed on to you, those who mourn them, and for all in need or any need or trouble. We give thanks, Lord, for the opportunities of the Diocese of Florida to serve you. We give thanks for the opportunity to come together shortly in convention to work further towards your will. We give thanks for the search and transition committees. We pray for our diocese. We pray for our bishop, who is coming to know that they will be our bishop and lead us into the future. We remember all these blessings. We ask all these things in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, welcome everyone. I am a poor substitute at this moment for our president of our standing committee, Sarah Minton, who was called away today and is probably at this moment cuddling a grandchild at the hospital in Gainesville. So we send our love and prayers to Mother Sarah and her family and look forward to the next time she's in with us. I'm going to start with our agenda for tonight. We're going to first go over the convention agenda. Then we're going to go over the resolution summary. After that, Mother Laura McGevney, the co-chair of the nominations or nominating committee, will review the nominations that will be considered at convention. And then after that, our wonderful treasurer, Bob White, will review some financial information with you. Now, the next bullet you see there is that there will be Q&A right before adjournment. And that is correct, but we do want you also to feel free to raise your hand and interject, ask questions as we go through. So for example, if we're on resolution 2 and that's a subject of question for you, please use your Zoom directions to raise your hand. As I recall, those are at the bottom of your screen, and you can sit under React, I believe, and you simply will see somewhere there to raise your hand. You'll be recognized, and you'll be asked to unmute because all of us are muted except me. And you will have the opportunity then to unmute, ask your question, and we'll move in the order that you signal that you have a question by raising your hand. That is a feature of Zoom. It puts you all in order as you ask your question or raise your hand rather. So the bottom line of all that was please don't just wait until the Q&A at the end. Please feel free to interject as we go through the meeting. So I will now move forward to run us through the agenda for the convention. Our convention opens Friday evening at 5 p.m. with a Holy Eucharist in Mandy's Chapel. It's going to be a really beautiful opening Eucharist. Mother Rachel Hill has been kind of the chair of worship for convention and has put together some beautiful organizational structure and ideas for our worship during convention. We'll then enjoy a Low Country Boil and enjoy visiting ministry tables over at the Barn Dining Hall in the Convention Center side of camp. And at 9 p.m., we'll have Compline in Mandy's Chapel for those who wish to attend. So again, you can see that worship is going to be a big part of our agenda at this convention. The next morning, if you're an early riser, again, following the orders of the day, the daily office, you're welcome to attend morning prayer at Mandy's Chapel. Then we will open a continental breakfast on the Youth Pavilion patio. Check-in for all our registrants will begin at 9 a.m. We'd love for you to be promptly there because we have about, if I remember correctly, something on the order of 275 or more people to check in. So we'd love to have you bright and early checking in. Now, Mother Sarah may not be with us this evening, but you'll see a note from her on our next line. Call to order will occur at 10 a.m. and Mother Sarah would like for you to please be in your seats. That's a Sarah Minton quote. We will have wonderful opening worship, that followed by a report from Bishop Mary Gray Reeves on the reconciliation and listening session work that she's been doing for us with us over the last couple of years. We'll go through what I call the niceties of the meeting with introductions, privileges, etc. Mother Sarah will provide a report on the work of the standing committee, and we'll move to resolutions. Now, you note that we're doing resolutions in the morning as opposed to the afternoon, and that's because it's part of our continuing effort to get feedback after every meeting. The feedback we got on last year's convention is please do resolutions in the morning. I'm full and I don't want to really have to think. So we'll be doing resolutions in the morning instead of the afternoon. And interspersed through the day, as this next bullet indicates, we'll hear presentations on diocesan ministries and from diocesan committees. So that will round out the morning. Next slide, please. At midday, we will actually, in addition to the prayer for mission and ministry, which is required by our rules of order, we'll actually enjoy a time of noonday prayer with each other, and then we'll dismiss for lunch. Lunch is going to be great. It's going to be served on the patio outside the meeting room, outside the YP, and it's going to be a served barbecue lunch. So come hungry that day. In the afternoon, we'll continue with financial reports, diocesan ministry, and committee reports. And then in the afternoon, one of our major activities, just like resolutions are a major activity in the morning, will be the elections of the various offices that have been up for nomination. Of course, nominations will be allowed from the floor as well. We'll then move to the address from Father Justin Yon as the incoming president of the standing committee. Then we'll enjoy a time of commissioning of ministries. We'll move to close the day and close in prayer. And actually, I believe we may be closing in music too, as well as I understand. And we will then adjourn. So that kind of rounds out our day. It's going to be a day again steeped in worship, but also with the wonderful business of our diocese. Does anyone have any questions about any of that before I move on? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we're going to move to our next section of the agenda, which is the resolutions portion. Now, just a note on what we're going to be going through, what the pieces of information that we're going to be going through. You will see as we go into our next slide that there are two groups of resolutions. Would you go on to slide 10, please? Thank you. Resolutions 1 through 7 were proposed by our Convention Committee on Charters and Canons. Resolutions 8 and 9 are proposed by the General Convention Deputation. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. Again, you see another QR code here that has a link directly to the resolutions. If you want to read the full text of them, there also will be an individual QR code on each of the following screens that will allow you to go to the individual resolution as opposed to all 9 in a group. Also, please note that there's a website reference so that if you want to look at the resolutions as they exist on our website, that's a great reference point there. One thing I will mention is you'll hear me talk about the report of the Convention Committee on Charter and Canons, and that report can be accessed through the website link. It's a very good document. Father Wiley Ammons was the primary author, along with others on the Convention Committee on Charter and Canons, and they did a really good job of explaining the rationale. In fact, they did a better job than I will do now, so my apologies. Let's move on to Resolution 1. So Resolution 1, which came out of the Convention Committee on Charter and Canons, is what I consider a cleanup resolution. It actually amends, as it says, 4 sections of the canons of the Diocese of Florida. The canons that it cleans up are ones that created an uncertainty or an ambiguity after we moved from January conventions to what for now is our practice of fall conventions. Different items within the canons and the requirements of the canons that were tied or linked to having a January convention. And what the committee did is to try to clear that anomaly or ambiguity, and to clean up the reference to procedures timed independently, not based off a January convention. Some are still tied to convention, but the convention is not treated as being necessarily in January. A lot of good work that the Convention Committee, Charter and Canons did to, again, smooth out any questions that timing change created. Any questions on Resolution 1? Great. We'll move on to Resolution 2. Resolution 2 actually was in some ways a reaction to the summer meeting, the special meeting this summer to create our rules for election of bishop. You may remember, if you were there, that it was identified that none of us really understood a category of lay delegates that existed in the canons called delegates at large. And because we didn't really understand it and didn't really know why we needed it, we, in connection with the creation of the special rules, deleted that category of lay delegates. So what the Canons Committee is indicating to you is that they believe, for clarity, we should similarly delete that category of lay delegates in the canons themselves. So we parallel in this resolution a concept that we began this summer at the special meeting with respect to the special rules for the election of a bishop. Another thing we do or the committee proposes in this resolution is to clarify that deputies to General Convention, who are also lay delegates by virtue of being deputies to General Convention, continue in their office until their successors are elected. Now, typically, we won't be doing that this year, but typically we elect deputies to General Convention the year before General Convention. This year, we identified that we won't meet in time to meet national canon, and so we'll actually be electing, as you will see later in our presentation, deputies to General Convention at this convention of the diocese, so that they're in place within the required time. So again, this resolution clarifies or corrects 2 categories of lay delegates, one to remove delegates at large, and one to clarify the term of deputies to General Convention. Any questions on Resolution 2? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move to Resolution 3. Resolution 3 is really a pretty simple resolution. It came out of some comments that were received by charter and canons from former canon Bob Griffiths, some clarifying recommendations that he made on several different fronts that would improve the diocesan canons. This one is a very simple one. It simply provides that the diocesan journal, convention journal, which is required to be published every year, will be electronically available. So you don't have to come and sit in this library to see the journal. We actually already have several of our journals online. We'll be adding another one or two shortly. And the rule will be going forward that the Diocesan Convention Journal will be electronically available. Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, that means it will reside on our webpage. So each year's journal, as we move forward, will be electronically available to the diocese on the webpage. Any questions about Resolution 3? Seeing none, we'll move to Resolution 4. Resolution 4 is a really interesting, what I consider experiential resolution. As you may recall, beginning in the election cycle of the election of the diocesan bishop in 2022, we had some quorum problems. We had difficulty establishing quorum, in part because of some issues with the way that our canons at that time provided for our delegate mix. They needed some work in 2022. And one of the reactions to that was a resolution or two passed last year, and some work that was done before that by the standing committee on the definition of clergy delegates. That work did very well, did us all very well in making quorum much more easily attainable and clear within the clergy order. Another thing that was suggested in 2022 to improve the ability to create quorum or obtain quorum was the concept of providing for remote or electronic participation in diocesan meetings, diocesan conventions. Our experience with that, and we passed a resolution last year at the 24 convention providing for a canonical amendment to allow for electronic participation. And we did use electronic participation at the first convention after that resolution was passed and that canon amendment was made, which was our special meeting this past summer. However, our experience with electronic participation demonstrated that electronic participation's really not as ready for us to use as we might hope. As you'll see on this slide, technical challenges concerned over equal participation, ballot secrecy, and cost to some degree. We did experience a significant cost of probably an additional $15,000 or so this past summer getting ready to use electronic participation. We had some significant third-party vendor training and mock use sessions and things like that that enabled us to use it with some success at this past summer's meeting. However, the biggest issues with respect to Zoom or electronic participation are the ones that are cited here last. We talked about this a little bit last night at the First Coast live pre-convention at All Saints Church here in Jacksonville. And so I've had an opportunity to study it a little bit more overnight and talk to you about Resolution 4. And really, as I talked with my team here and studied the issue, the real concern is not cost. It is the equal participation and ballot secrecy. Our charter provides that votes are secret. and that we as participants have a right to a secret ballot. And the problem with the current technology is that it uses this very technology of Zoom and electronic voting outside the meeting is done by Zoom polls, which do not provide for ballot secrecy. And it's really concerns about that subject matter and comments that we received from the presiding bishop's team about that concern is the reason that this amendment to canons is coming forward. And basically what this amendment would do is that for the purpose of the canons, and I'll come back to that point when we get to resolution 6, for the purpose of the canons, the committee proposes to remove the canon that allowed us to have remote participation. Now, in doing that and presenting this to you, standing committee and we here on the diocesan staff have received comments that folks are concerned about a loss of participation for folks who are not able to attend. And we greatly regret that. It is not an intention to disenfranchise anybody. It is really a matter of protecting the canonical requirements for our voting process. Nobody wishes to disenfranchise or disable the ability to use it. We loved the part about us being able to offer it to some who were homebound or ill or simply could not attend and wanted to exercise their franchise, so to speak. But unfortunately, the overriding concerns about the quality of the participation is why the committee presented this resolution. I see that I have one comment, and I welcome any comments on this. But before we move to resolution 4, Deacon Diane, would you like to speak? Let's make sure that you will be prompted, Deacon Diane, to unmute, which you have, and you're unmuted. Great. So if you'd like to go ahead, we're not able to hear you.
Okay, can you all hear
There
me
you
now?
are. Yes, ma'am. Gotcha.
Okay,
Thanks so much.
yeah, it seems to me that the technical issues are going to evolve. And
Yes.
so if we completely remove the option at this point because we don't have the technology to handle it, it's almost like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So would we not be smarter to leave it there, but doesn't say we have to use it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. I actually sit as scribe to the Convention Committee on Charter and Canons, and so I was privy to their discussion of exactly that subject. And they felt, and the reason they presented the resolution, even with that comment, is that if technology does advance to a point that that electronic participation is safe and protects ballot secrecy, the canon can always be re-amended, but that it left too much of an ambiguity about who had the right to decide to use it or not. The language was, or excuse me, currently is before this resolution that we may participate. The delegates may participate. So it wasn't, it doesn't exist in absolute language now. But again, the concern on that point is who gets to decide that. And so instead of leaving a canon with that ambiguity, it was the committee's decision to go ahead and remove it and keep cognizant of the fact that convention may at some future point want to reinstitute this opportunity. Did you have any other question or comment, Deacon Diane?
No, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. I see a question from Randy Evans. Did you ask him to unmute?
Hey, there we go.
There you
Hey,
go.
Pete.
Thank you,
Hey,
Randy.
Kate. Yeah, I would echo what Deacon Diane said, but I would also just, I mean, no one's wishing another COVID epidemic or anything else like that, but what if, we had something like that that made it not only difficult but unwise to have people together in a room, and it would be better to have an electronic meeting than to have no meeting at all.
I certainly understand your point. I don't have an answer for you about that. As I said, I simply am the scribe and was present for the conversation. And the consensus was that the concerns about the canon as it exists outweighed the comments or the positive nature of the existing canon. I think your comment will be welcome when we meet together next Saturday. And I think that there will be many other comments potentially along that same line. Again, the committee simply believed that the negative aspects of allowing for electronic participation at this time outweighed the benefits of the canon.
Okay, well, thanks for that feedback. I'll be
I
ready.
do want to mention, thank you, Randy. I do want to mention to everybody, as I indicated earlier, when we started into the resolutions, the Charter and Canons Committee did a really great report that accompanies the publication of the canon, of the resolutions, and that is referenced on the link that is found on the first page of the resolutions. It's a link to the diocesan website. And I would really encourage you to particularly reference it with respect to this canon, because in this resolution, because the discussion that Father Wiley presents there on behalf of the committee is really well done, and probably much better than anything I've just said. So please feel free to reference that. It's again, very cogently written. I see I have a question from Robert Freeman. Mr. Freeman, if you would unmute.
Thank you. And
Yes, sir.
thank you for all the work that y'all have done on this. My question just popped up, prompted by the conversation that you had with Randy and Deacon Diane. And it was basically this: is any thought being given before we meet to addressing the question of how a decision would be made, what authority would be empowered to make a decision about whether to allow electronic participation or not, so that if it were the sense, of the convention to allow this, you've already thought through, okay, we don't think this is ideal, but this is how it could work or would work, instead of being blindsided by that, if you will.
That's a great comment. I think that again, this may be a resolution that people want to study in actually the words of the resolution directly. And I'm not telling you or suggesting to you that you should submit a floor amendment, but it's always possible to amend a resolution to do something different. So, for example, if that was how a delegate was personally directed, a delegate could go in and rework the language of the existing canon, as opposed to deleting it to instead amending it. So feel free, any of you, to submit a floor amendment on that. If you will be Zooming for the meeting next Saturday, as I know some of you will, two things I want to say to you. Number one, if you do have any amendments to existing resolutions, please feel free to send us any wording changes that you might suggest as an amendment or an alternate before convention, so that we can have those ready to display. We'd love if you would do that. And I also want to be clear for any of you who are Zoom participants next Saturday at convention, that if this passes, you won't be disenfranchised for that day. Zoom participants who are already on won't suddenly lose the right to vote at 10:30 in the morning or whatever it is, 11 o'clock, your right to vote will continue through the day, because if it passes, this resolution is set to take effect at the adjournment of this convention, not immediately. Other resolutions, when passed, take effect immediately. So there can be immediate canon changes, as we experienced last year. Any further questions on resolution 4 or comments? Great, thank you. We'll move now to resolution 5. Resolution 5 is a very simple resolution. It is only a resolution of a very few words. And what it requires is that our standing committee, in normal times, when it's not the ecclesiastical authority and is meeting every few weeks or every other week, will meet at least quarterly. And the goal for that, again, I think this may have been a comment that came from some comments from former Canon Bob Griffiths, is that we want an informed, active standing committee that knows what's going on in the diocese and is ready to give counsel and advice, as its job is when we have a diocesan bishop. So that's the simple approach that this resolution takes, the simple subject matter. And by the way, I would mention as I talk about that particular concept, that this is a small single issue resolution. The Charter and Canons Committee, particularly in their work in presenting resolutions for consideration at convention, worked hard to make sure that the resolutions were broken into pieces so that concepts weren't mixed in any resolution, and we are able, as we meet in convention, to focus in on individual resolutions as opposed to trying to pick apart resolutions. So there again, they're kind of single purpose, single use resolutions. With no comments or questions on resolution 5, we'll move to resolution 6. Resolution 6 is a slight change of gears. It's like resolution 4 in that it addresses remote participation, but its purpose is to be parallel, so that it's clear that resolution 4 doesn't have to be interpreted to apply to the bishop election, but rather that instead of amending the canons, resolution 6 would amend the special rules that we adopted this summer. So again, same rationale, same thought pattern, but one resolution affects canon, that's resolution 4. One resolution affects the special rules for the election. Any questions or comments about that? Seeing none, we'll move to resolution 7. Resolution 7 is an interesting resolution because it is born out of experience. It is an amendment to the canons, and it's specifically an amendment that addresses how the committees of the diocese work. When the existing canons were created, the concept throughout the canons is that our bishop, when we have a sitting bishop, is a member of all committees, and that the bishop appoints the chair of the committee. Interestingly, for some reason, the canons also provide that the appointed committee chair does not have a vote. Now, if you're a committee chair, and this actually came out of the committee for the Camp and Conference Center, if you're a person putting hard work into the leadership of a committee, particularly as small as our committees are right now, you want the right to express yourself and to have a role in the decision that your committee's making. Particularly often the bishop is not active or present on many of our committees in their meetings. And so it was thought by the committee and convention committee on charter and canons that our appointed committee chairs should have the right to vote on the committees they serve and lead, particularly because they are putting so much time into it. So that's the simple, single purpose of Resolution 7. Do we have any questions about Resolution 7 or any comments? Okay, now we have just moved out of the amendment, of the canon and special rule resolutions that have been proposed by our convention committee on charter and canons. And as we move to Resolution 8, we move into two resolutions that actually, excuse me, were presented for to come to the floor using our rules of order processes and requirements in advance so that they could be vetted and come on floor kind of right, as opposed to being presented from the floor on the day of. And that these resolutions 8 and 9 came out of our as we said in the first slide, our general convention deputation. You may remember that a similar resolution, not identical, but similar resolution came forward last year, but was not brought to consideration or vote. These two resolutions relate to youth participation. This resolution would, number 8, would actually amend canon and would require that diocesan council elect a youth member to diocesan council, and also provides for a 1-year term for that elected member. So this particular resolution, again, is canonical, changes the canonical composition of diocesan council, and provides for the term of a youth member age 16 to 17. And just a little bit of additional background, the reason that age bracket was selected by the general convention deputation is because under the canons of the church, a youth of the age of 16 isn't treated as an adult communicant. That is, a youth communicant is above the age of 16 or older, is treated as an adult communicant. That's why 16, 17 was chosen. Obviously, at age 18, entering the age of majority for legal purposes, a communicant of that age is an adult communicant under any understanding. I see I have one question or comment. Rosie, would you please unmute?
Hey there, Keith.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
My question involves, is it just one voting youth member to the diocesan council? Okay, so I have a concern that it will always be a youth member from the Jacksonville area and not from Santa Fe, the Palm Coast area, Appalachia. That's my concern.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I do understand. I follow you. Not to just for information, I can imagine that one of the reasons that the General Convention deputation chose a single youth representative is because currently under our canons, there are only 13 voting members anyway, and they may have been concerned that to have more than one might create too much of a voting group that would concern others about there being that many youths. I don't know. I wasn't privy to their conversations,
Okay.
but that may be, Rosie, one thing they were thinking. Please do
That makes
feel
sense.
free to raise the question at convention,
Sure.
because that's a great question, because we do have other members who, for
Yes.
example, who represent in various groups who represent various areas. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question about Resolution 8? Okay, moving to Resolution 9. Now, Resolution 9 is very similar. As you read the description of it there, you'll see very, very similar language. The difference is that this is what I call a normative resolution. It encourages a certain action. It doesn't require an action, it encourages an action. And what it encourages is that our parishes and missions include youth as non-voting members with seat and voice on their vestries and mission boards. Again, that's this. It's kind of like the resolutions that came out of charter and canons. It is a single purpose resolution. Again, unlike the other 8 resolutions, does not modify any canon or rule of the diocese, simply encourages parish and missions to include youth as non-voting members on their vestries and mission boards. Any questions about it? Any comments? Okay, that winds us through the resolutions. And now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mother Laura McGivney, one of the co-chairs of the nominating committee that's done such great work, and actually even today is still doing great work for us in preparation for convention. So just one moment, and Mother Laura McGivney will.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be with you. As Keith said, I am Mother Laura McGivney, and myself and Father William Stokes had the privilege of just being with a fabulous committee that has worked on nominations for you. And I just want to begin by saying thank you to all those who nominated individuals, and all those who self-nominated, and all those who agreed to be willing to run. It is something to be said for those who are willing to stand and see if they are chosen as a part of the leadership of this diocese. And I hope that you will hold all of these candidates in your prayers as we move through to next Saturday. So you can scan if you would like for the nominee bios, or again, they're all on the website. So just as an overview, this year for the Diocesan Council, we are electing one layperson to the River region. It's a 3-year term, and one layperson to the Appalachie as an Appalachie region representative. It's a 3-year term. And for the Diocesan Council, we also are electing one clergy member as a 3-year term. The Disciplinary Board, one clergy and one lay member each. And for Standing Committee, we have a little bit of an aberration this year. We are electing one clergy member for a 3-year term and one clergy member for a 2-year term. Same with the lay, one for 3 and one for a 2-year term. And that is because, if you may remember, last year, unfortunately, our clergy member and our lay member that were duly elected later had to step down from that role. And so the individuals that moved into those roles did so for a 1-year term only. And now that is why we will be filling the remainder of those 2-year terms. We also are electing someone to the Suwannee Board of Trustees, one lay member for a 3-year term. So the Diocesan Council. The Diocesan Council clergy nominees are the Reverend Wiley Ammons from Redeemer Jacksonville, the Reverend Joe Gibbs from Church of Our Savior Jacksonville, and the Reverend Quinn Parham from All Saints Jacksonville. The Diocesan Council, and if we want to switch, this is a little confusing, this slide, because it kind of has them all mixed up, but for the Appalachie region, the candidates are James Fort, Amy Johnson, and Lauren Soto. Can you switch? Sorry, can you go back one? And then, so James Fort is from St. Michael and All Angels. Amy Johnson is from Holy Comforter, Tallahassee, and Lauren Soto is from St. John's, Tallahassee. And then the lay nominees for the River region are John Currington, Bob Hood, and Meredith Schwartz. And John Currington is from St. Mark's, Palatka. Bob Hood is from Holy Communion, Hawthorne, and Meredith Schwartz is from Trinity Parish, St. Augustine. The disciplinary board, everyone's favorite. For the disciplinary board, we are electing one clergy member again, and we have the Reverend Terry Callanow from St. Mary's Green Cove Springs and the Reverend Ken Johnson from St. Luke's Live Oak. The disciplinary board, we're also electing again one lay member, and our nominees are Gina Donahue from St. Mark's, Jacksonville, and Fred Coberlin from St. James, Lake City. Standing committee. So standing committee for the clergy nominees for the 3-year term are the Reverend Kurt Benham from Trinity Parish in St. Augustine, the Reverend Lisa Miro from St. Andrews, Jacksonville, and the Reverend Roy Tuck from Holy Trinity, Gainesville. Clergy nominees for the 2-year term are the Reverend Bob Goolsby from St. Thomas Palm Coast, and the Reverend Deacon Marcia Holmes from Christ Church, Ponte Vedra. Standing committee lay nominees. So the lay nominees for the 3-year term: Pam Jordan Anderson from St. John's, Tallahassee, Bob Bune from St. Mary's Green Cove Springs, Aurelia Donaldson from St. Philip's, Jacksonville, Glenn Geiler from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville, Bob Hood from Holy Communion, Hawthorne, Mary Dudley White from St. Mark's, Jacksonville. And the lay nominees for the 2-year term are J. Brian Green from St. Michael and All Angels, Tallahassee, Caroline Nichols from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville, Anne Seraphine from Holy Trinity, Gainesville, Jack Tull from Christ Church, Ponte Vedra, Rhonda Williams from St. Paul's, Federal Point. Now for the Suwannee Board of Trustees. The Suwannee Board of Trustees nominees are Cortland Irick from St. Mark's, Jacksonville, and Marissa Lingatis from St. John's Cathedral, Jacksonville. And coming soon, because we just closed the time for it. The nominee slate for 2027 General Convention deputies will be released. We'll be gathering that information and getting that to you as soon as we can. Are there any questions? All right, thank you so much.
And now we welcome our wonderful treasurer, Bob White, to come and present a financial summary for you.
Evening, everybody. My name is Bob White. I became your treasurer in January of 2024. My first convention was last September. And as I said last night, despite my best efforts, I remain your treasurer today. And I'm ready to give you a little bit of a summary on our financial affairs at the diocese. And pay close attention, if you would, it's very important. The first slide is 2024. When we met in September, it was in September, obviously, so we didn't have the 24 results. We only had them through July or August, just like we only have that through this year. So the way it worked out last year is we ended up with a surplus on the bottom line of 130 against a budgeted bottom line surplus of 20. You might notice, however, that the third line down is what it's called the operating bottom line. That means the revenues that the diocese brought in from pledges from churches and some other ancillary income that we receive from what we do here came out to about $2.7 million. Our expenses were a little over $3 million, so we actually had a deficit in our operating margin of $360,000. However, we had $490,000 of what I call non-operating revenue, and last year that was in the form of about $300,000 from the endowment and about $190,000 from the foundation. So that's why we ended up having a surplus. Does everybody understand that concept okay? Beautiful. Let's move on to where we are so far through 2025. We only have through July at the moment. We might have August by convention, but I don't know we're going to be able to pull that off. Our revenue is $1.5 million. Again, using the same logic I just explained in 2024, we have operating expenses thus far this year of $1.94 million, and that means our operating margin is a $430,000 deficit. In the real world, you'd call that a loss, but since we are not for profit, we call that a deficit. However, we have been had some non-operating revenue in the form of about $300,000 from the endowment, about $100,000 from the $110,000 from the foundation. So our bottom line through July is a $20,000 deficit, and our budgeted deficit through July is $60,000. Now we didn't budget a deficit for the year, but that's where we are through July on the budget. So as you know, you develop an annual budget and you have to parcel it out in 12 installments, and you just figure it out. It's a lot more art than science, trust me. So that's how we are looking through 2025. Go to the next line, please.
Actually, you have a question.
Oh, question. I didn't see it. Where is it?
Randy and
Okay.
I don't want to get too much into the weeds. This is Randy Evans. Can you just briefly describe, you mentioned the non-operating revenue from the endowment and the foundation. Can you just mention what some of the rules are that you have to work with for disbursements from either of those funds?
I can. The endowment is under control of the diocese, primarily not primarily, through the diocesan council. So if we decide or recommend that we need money, and we did this, I know earlier in 2025 for some issues at Camp Weed, that's brought to the diocesan council, and it's either approved or not approved. If it's approved, we can use the money. So that rule is through the diocesan council. As far as the foundation, if everybody doesn't know, I'll say that it's a separate corporation, has its own board of directors. It was formed to support the diocese, but we can petition them for, a gift. And if they so decide to do it from their board of directors, then we get it. If they don't, we don't get it. Those are kind of the basic rules. Any other questions on that? If not, we can move to the next slide. I am sometimes asked by folks, well, doesn't the diocese have all this debt, and aren't we in trouble? And the answer is we have some debt, but we're not in trouble. The first thing I want to talk about is that we have something called the Nehemiah Fund, which we'll talk about in a minute on a separate slide. That is basically a real estate and property fund. And we, from time to time, will loan churches money based on, petitions from the church and, justification. And, some come with financial analysis and some don't, but we work through it. And again, that's a diocesan council decision. Understand that it's kind of, we're kind of loaning money to ourselves in some respect, because the diocese owns all the property and the facilities. So it behooves us to make sure that churches who can't afford a certain project, might be a roof, might be a drainage issue, might be some structural issues, that by doing that, we're preserving the value of the asset that we already own. So it's sort of a handshake agreement. Right now, that balance is about $145,000 in what are basically short-term loans. And there's 5 to 6 diocesan entities. I say entities because they're not all churches. There are some missions involved, and also a college chapel. So those terms range from 1 to 4 years. They're all, as I mentioned, they're all funded with the Nehemiah Investment Fund. And once again, as I also mentioned, they're already assets of the diocese, so we're sort of, it's sort of self-help, but we do expect the churches through their operating revenues to refund that money because it is technically a loan. Let's also talk about a different kind of debt, and that debt would be mortgage guarantees. So since the diocese owns the properties, when a church takes out a mortgage, maybe to build a new campus or start a new church, or maybe a church plants a new church, and they have to get a traditional bank mortgage, the diocese, as the owner of the property, has to guarantee that mortgage. Right now, we have about $7.5 million in mortgage guarantees, and it's relating to basically 3 churches. Terms that from those loans are about 1 to 5 years. The churches, as I mentioned, are responsible for servicing and paying their own mortgages. To hopefully give people some relief from stress about this, our current balance sheet has about $20 million in net assets. In the non-church world, we call that just assets minus liabilities, which is the backing for these mortgages. And I would also say that 20 million is probably a low number. Think about the gap you may have between an assessed value and a market value. That's kind of the same difference here, but obviously nobody knows what a market value is unless you try to sell something. And we are not technically usually in the selling business, so we go ahead and go with the valuation that's on the books, which again is very conservative, and it's about $20 million as we speak. Next slide. If there's no questions, can't see any hands up. Let's talk about the investment funds that fund some of this activity. We have the Nehemiah Fund, which again is a real estate and property fund. Historically, this fund has been used for a variety of reasons, but we pretty much have a hard and fast, not even pretty much, we have a hard and fast rule at this time that it can only be used for real estate and property. So church HVAC system blows out or their roof blows out and they need some assistance, it will come from that fund, again approved by the diocesan council. So you can see the balance from 2024 to 2025, which is about $100,000 change. You might think, well, that's not much of a rate of return, but realize there's ins and outs here. If we sell property, it goes in this fund. If we buy property, it comes out of this fund. If we invest in properties in the form of short-term loans to churches, it comes out of this fund. So that's what the Nehemiah Fund is all about. We also have an endowment fund, which is, we mentioned a minute ago when Randy asked the question, that is a fund that is controlled by the diocese and under the approval authority to use those funds by the diocesan council. So that had a balance at the end of 2024 of 4 million, and it's 3.9. And if you go back to the 24 and 25 income statements that I shared earlier, that non-operating revenue is coming out of those funds. So again, it looks like, well, whoever's investing our money is not doing a very good job, but they actually earned about at least in 2025 through July, our balanced return is a little above 7% in one of those funds and slightly more than that in another. So those are funds that we have an outside firm manage for us. It's under the auspices of the Finance and Investment Committee. And again, the use of those funds is from the approval or disapproval from the diocesan council. Some other things I wanted to share with respect to finance and accounting going on in the diocese. We have worked very hard since last convention to this convention to improve the structure and composition of the Finance and Investment Committee. We currently have 5 members. We have myself, I'm on it. Matt Green is the chairperson. He is from San Jose Episcopal in Jacksonville. Actually, Lunsford is from Our Savior in Jacksonville. Mark Armesto is from, he's in Quincy. Is that everybody? Yeah, I might have left somebody out. We have 5 people right now. We'd like to get a couple more. So if anybody knows someone who, especially in other areas of the diocese outside of this region, Jacksonville, that would participate, that would be fantastic. It's not a ton of work, but we need people that have a little passion for doing the right thing and helping create a structure that provides for the diocese to do the right thing. Audits. Last year, we talked about this at convention. When I became treasurer, which was again January 24, we had not even had the 2019 audit complete, which is, if you do the math, it's 4 or 5 years late, which is kind of embarrassing. It doesn't show very well on the diocese from a credibility standpoint. And everybody's been working very hard. We have made substantial progress, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, so I won't. But the chair of the audit committee, Tom Paul, will be discussing the details of where we stand at the convention in a couple of weeks. I think everybody will be very happy. The work has been time-consuming and Herculean, and the people here at the diocese, the juggernaut of our finance and accounting department, which consists of 2 people, Nella Castiov and Linda Thomas, doing their day jobs and also trying to do, multiple audits over the years. So more to come on that. I think you'll be very happy. We're also very happy about the fact that we've been working very hard with the new management and the team at Camp Weed and the committee that they have there to create a budget and to actually report financials against that budget that didn't exist a year ago. In fact, when I agreed to take this high-paying position, the 2 things that kind of blew my mind were the audits were 5 years behind, and the fact that nobody honestly really knew much about what went on at Camp Weed financially. They would just put their heads down and go to work when they needed money. A phone call came here, and a person who used to be pretty good at raising money would make a phone call and they would plug the gap. We don't have that connection anymore in terms of raising money, which is a problem for the diocese, which includes Camp Weed. And so we will continue to work on that, but we at least now have visibility and transparency into the books at Camp Weed, and we know what they need and we know what they spend, and we will ultimately roll that up into the diocesan financial statements, which is as it always should have been, because it's owned by the diocese. So the last thing I'll say is, if you again go back, and we don't need to go back because you've seen it twice now, and that's okay, appreciate that. Our operating margins are negative, as you saw, and they're negative by, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And it just is what it is at the moment, because we don't have any fundraising or annual fund. We don't have anything other than what the churches provide to the diocese and what we have in the form of investments that we can reach into when we have to, and we've had to. So that's a problem that everybody needs to understand, and it's obviously not sustainable over the long term, because if you're spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, you're going to basically outspend your investment gains, and the logical conclusion is not good. So this is part of why it's important to get the bishop process going. This is my personal opinion, and have somebody come on board that understands numbers a little bit. So that is really the summary financials thus far. And again, I'm happy to take any questions from anyone that's on the call. Couldn't have been that clear, people. Come on. I know who did it.
Thank you so much, Bob. You are a huge blessing to me personally and to this diocese. We appreciate all your excellent work. While we were changing out presenters, a question popped up on the chat. I believe it's from Jackie, who's a wonderful member of our finance committee. And the question related to the ability of parishes in arrears to vote at convention. The way our canons are structured, the short answer is yes, parishes in arrears do vote at convention. for a broader set of information for everybody, there are probably about a total of 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 parishes in arrears on their individual pledge payments to the diocese. As you may know, our budget is built in principle off of requests to the individual parishes and missions to contribute to the annual diocesan budget. They receive each year an estimated pledge amount that's requested of them, that's based off of their revenues from their last available parochial report. Now, currently, what that means in the way that the parochial report cycle works is that if I'm asking for a pledge, if I, the diocese, am asking for a pledge for year 3, it comes based on a percentage of revenue from year 1. And the reason for that, again, is because of the parochial report cycle. When we start our budget for year 3, we don't have year 2's information yet. So we have to work from year 1 rather than year 2. And that's, just an inherent weakness in our reporting system nationally as a church. But to Jackie's direct question, the way the canons are currently built for the ability of a congregation to vote at convention, the failure to remit pledge would have to be so old and so identified by the diocese to the congregation that no, there are no congregations that will be disqualified for voting at this convention. Now, again, as we move forward and we work harder and harder and harder, as Bob's referenced, on our structure and implementation of our financial canons, it's possible that parishes that are currently in arrears now may have been in arrears and been notified of their arrearage long enough that at the next time we convene as a diocese, they are disqualified. But obviously, that's not the goal of anybody. All of us want all of us at the table. And we work all the time to try to meet with congregations, discuss their financial performance, and work with them to bring them current and to bring them into the activity of the diocese and to strengthen their parish life, because we're really all about the mission of Christ throughout the diocese and strengthening one another, not pointing out arrearages and disqualifying people. Obviously, we have to use sound business practices and we have to honor and implement our canons, but that's obviously none of our goals, including Jackie's. I know Jackie. She's a wonderful, faithful person. So anyway, we're now at the Q&A portion of the day, of the meeting. Appreciate the questions and comments that y'all have offered as we've gone through. But before we wind up, I want to first ask if any of you have any further questions or comments about anything we've covered tonight. If you do, please raise your hand through the Zoom function. I always forget that and put my hand up. Seeing none, and thank you for that. That means that's quite a compliment from all of you being on this Zoom with us tonight and supporting us through this. Before we wind up, I do want to really point out and emphasize a real initiative that we on the staff are working towards and encouraging you, our constituency, our churches, our parishioners and congregants and communicants. Please connect with us. As you see in front of you right now, there are 3 QR codes. The outer 2 QR codes, Instagram and Facebook, would take you to those respective pages of ours on Instagram and Facebook. We've worked hard about making sure that what we put out by email, we also communicate through social media. excuse me, and we've even tried to have some fun on social media too. Yes, Episcopalians can have fun. And on Facebook, for example, you might have noticed that one of the things that our communications team has done is to do a really fun photo montage after we publish our monthly newsletter, and they take some of the photos that have been published in the Diocesan Digest and make a really fun montage for us. Also, I want to point out the central QR code, which we've got labeled Diocesan Digest. But one of the main things I want to say to you about that is the best way, if you're not already, to connect with us by email. Because since the Diocesan Standing Committee took ecclesiastical authority responsibility in the fall of 2023, they and we on staff have worked very, very hard to push out communications as frequently as they're merited and as we can. Literally last week, the week before, and this week and next week, we're just about at an email blast a day, some days more than one. We're not trying to fill up your email box. What we're trying to do is make sure you're informed about the workings of your diocese, because we are here to serve you, not to be served by you. So with that lecture, and I apologize for the lecture, we'll move on to our final screen, which is to say we'll see you at convention. We appreciate your participation tonight. We appreciate our presenters, and God bless.